Welcome back to Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. I'm your host, Jon Braddock, author of Click Here When I Die and founder of My Life and Wishes, The Legacy Vault, because the scavenger hunt ends here. As you all know, October is Estate Planning Awareness Month, and this week, October 20th to 26th, is designated as the official Estate Planning Awareness Week. So having an estate plan is important, but ensuring that it's executed correctly is critical so that it does what it's designed to do when the time comes. Today, I am thrilled to welcome back someone who has not only walked the talk, but is now teaching others how to walk it well. Dean Eason-Williams is the founder of NotaryCLT Signings and Apex Mentorship. Dean was on the show a little over a year ago, sharing his personal nightmare, one that deeply resonated with our listeners. Since then, he has written a phenomenal new book titled From Trust to Transfer, a practical guide for notaries conducting estate signings. This guide is literally transforming how professional notaries approach estate work with clarity, with confidence, with compassion. So whether you're a notary, an attorney, or an estate planning professional, today's conversation will show you why this book matters and how it can help everyone involved in a trust signing avoid costly, confusing, and, shall I say, even disastrous mistakes. Welcome back, my friend. It is great to see you.
It is a pleasure to be back with you. Good to see you.
Terrific. Well, you're out in North Carolina, as in NotaryCLT, that's Charlotte, right? The airport code.
Yes.
How's the weather out there? I know you all had a fairly hot summer.
We had a hot summer, but we've had, it's almost as if the winter is knocking on the door. It's like we're going to skip fall because we actually had 45 degrees this morning, which is bizarre. But hey, it always, right around this time, about 2 weeks before Halloween, it always gets cold.
There we go. There we go. Yeah, I remember up in Wisconsin, we used to have two seasons. We had winter and construction. So,
Right. Gotcha.
anyway, man, it's great to see you. Hey, congratulations on your new book. As our viewers can see, to Dean, if you're looking at the screen to his left, is his book, From Trust to Transfer. Tell me, Dean, what inspired you to write a book? I know you're busy over the summer because you're writing a book.
Well, thank you. I actually, okay, so within the Apex Mentorship, I teach a class that is Mastering Trust and Estates. And so I put together all of this material. It was all the stuff that I had done because I really wanted to cover it the way that I wanted to cover it. And so, I mean, I literally had PDFs, and so much material. And while I was teaching that course, the mentees, the folks who were attending it, they're like, "Wow, we need to have this like all in one thing." And one of the attendees actually had put everything in a binder, and I was like, "Okay, yeah, I probably need to maybe put this all together in a more comprehensive thing." And of course, my cheerleader, Jody. He was like, "You need to write a book. You do this, and you need to write a book. You need to put it all together. This is great." So that's what did it. But also the concept of I felt like there was a need for this, for something for someone to actually have as a reference there at the table in case something should go wrong, or not really wrong, but in case they approach something like, wait, I need to know kind of what to do in this moment. And so that's part of what the book does, is there at the table too.
I love that. I love that. What I really like about it is you're impacting, not just your mentees or the people within your network. You really wanted to reach out because, when we last spoke, you shared a lot of experiences you've been through. You're a professional notary, a certified notary trust delivery agent. You have all the credentials. You understand, what can go wrong. And the main thing is it's your compassion, that knowing that someone finally gets around to doing their estate plan and invest the time to get things done. And then one notarial error could potentially blow the entire thing up. Am I right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, as you well know from when I lost my dad, it was 2 years and 2 months of just pure chaos, of certain things that were going wrong and things that were coming in. And so with the book, it's an encouragement to make sure that the notaries that are actually conducting these signings are actually doing what needs to be done so that there aren't errors and issues down the road. Because one missed stamp, one missed signature, one missed initial could really cause havoc, and in some cases invalidate an entire plan, and that can be very costly. It could hurt families. It just chaos. Despite having a plan, it's great to have the plan. Absolutely get the plan, but make sure that the plan is actually executed. And that's one of the things that we, as estate signing agents, we seal the deal. We help the signers cross the finish line and make sure that everything is sealed.
Yeah, I have to say when you first really and we've known each other for be coming up on 2 years. When you told me the book was coming out, I was like, well, hurry up. When? I want to get it. And as soon as it was in the Kindle version, I downloaded it. And what really impressed me about this book, I am not a notary. I'm zero, right? I just know there's a stamp and you got to log something in a journal. And it goes well beyond that. But I do know a lot about estates and trusts and the legal documents that people need to have in place. And when I read through this book, which is a quick read, and it's an easy read, it's laid out. And there were so many aha moments for me in there. It's like, wow, this is so important that these steps are followed. And it's really interesting. And for anyone who's listening, if you're not in the estate planning world and you're not in, a notary or something like that, just get a copy of the book, because you're going to learn something that's critically essential, that what a lot of notaries do.
And in a very short amount of time, because my goal with this was to really not have any fluff or filler, but to just get right at it and share the entire process. And I think that's what a lot of people thus far have said that they really like about the book, is that it's not storytelling or anything like that. It is, hey, let's hit the ground running. Here's the 9 most common documents. Here's how you present them without practicing law, and so many different nuggets. And it's really a book for not necessarily just estate signing agents. I mean, even it's just to actually understand the entire process is actually real easy to do in less than 2 hours, because it's very easy read.
Oh, absolutely. It fits my attention span. If I that's why my book is 136 pages, because
Right, right.
it's my attention span. But you just mentioned something here. I want to unpack it a little bit. Let's talk about the fine line between helping and giving legal advice. Yeah. Can you talk about that and how your book helps notaries stay compliant without feeling like they're cold and unhelpful?
Well, we as notaries public, we are not legal practitioners. We're not lawyers. We're not attorneys, and we're not allowed to actually give legal advice or counsel. And so when a notary is, and this applies basically to all notarial documents that we might do, but more specifically during a signing like this, because you're at the table and the signer uh, at the signing ceremony, they're wanting to know answers to questions. We might know the answer, but if it's like asking, what does this term mean? We can't do that. We can't define terms. We can't explain the intricacies, if you will, of the documents. We can give an overall description, but one of the because otherwise, if you begin to define terms or step into that legal side, it's called UPL, unauthorized practice of law, and that's a big no-no. So one of the things that is sort of I guess maybe a key element of the book is helping notaries avoid crossing that line and helping the notary stay in their lane, staying out of that unauthorized practice of law. And one of the ways that I do that is by what I call teaching the art of the redirect. So, say for example, you're at the table and a signer asks a question. What I do is I teach the documents, not so that we go and look at all of the minutia and who is the beneficiary and try and know all that stuff, because that's none of our business. We just need to know where the blanks are, verify IDs, witness signings, and so forth. But while you're at the table, the signer may say, well, who are my beneficiaries? Well, I'm not allowed to actually tell them who they are because the contents of the document are not of my concern. However, I can actually tell them, well, you may find your answer in this section. You may reread this section and find your own answer. If that is not satisfactory to them or it doesn't answer their question, then by all means, we'll say we can get the attorney on the line and make sure that the attorney can answer your question, because that's a great question for your attorney. And that's really one of our go-to lines. That's a great question for your attorney. If the art of the redirect doesn't work. But a lot of the times when they'll say, well, how long does this last? Who is my agent? All those things. But by knowing the documents, we as notaries public, estate signing agents can actually point to a section or say, for example, that usually appears on the first or second page of the document that is in your hand. We didn't tell them specifically the answer to their question, but we're helping them find the answer to their own question. And I think that's sort of a really great approach. And I'll tell you why. Once you actually show somebody where something's at, or that you show them where they can find it themselves, they're going to know the next time where to look to find that same answer. So not only are you directing them where they can find it, you're basically helping them remember where that answer is.
So that really ties into, probably not the right term, but document flow, right? Because anyone who has an estate plan, or anyone listening, an attorney, et cetera, I mean, these are not small documents. This is not a 2-page promissory note or something like that. This thing is massive, and there's a flow to it. Is that correct? And is there a way to understand, like you kind of said, what to touch and what not to touch?
Well, what I actually, and this is not necessarily something that I own as far as the process, but it's what I practice. And this is what I teach folks to do. For example, in the book, I talk about the 9 most common documents. What I will do is I will order those documents in a certain sequence because it flows with how the process goes. So I will always start with the trust and the certificate of trust, because that's the largest document typically. Now, sometimes it's been a little bizarre where the power of attorney is, gigantic for some reason, worse than the trust. But typically, the trust is actually the largest document in the full living trust. And I'm talking about a revocable trust. And so we'll typically start with the trust, the certificate of trust, and then they will go into the will, and then the financial power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, typically the advanced healthcare directive / living will, and then like the HIPAA authorization release, and then the disposition. Those are typical. And then finally, the very last document that we'll do is the transfer deed, if there is one to put into the name of the trust. And so the flow of that kind of, to me, starts like high level and then kind of goes down. And the reason why I like to actually do it that way is it's almost in the same order of life, because the living trust is a living trust. It lives as you live. So it changes as you change. As you add things, take things away, get married, it changes and so forth. So then you have the financial, the healthcare, and then the advanced healthcare directive or advanced directive living will, which are for end of life decisions, right? You have financial, which actually is for when someone is incapacitated or they can't serve for themselves. Same thing with healthcare. Then you have end of life, right? So it's like you're going through the human life cycle as you're doing the presentation. And that just works. Now, what's bizarre about that is a lot of times you'll have spouse and spouse. You might have husband and wife. You might have, wife and wife, husband, husband, whichever. Uh, and so you may try and present both sets of documents at the same time. You have to have witnesses that do that. And of course, for us here at NotaryCLT, we use other notaries public as our witnesses, as well as other notaries public who are also credentialed with CNTDA, Certified Trust Delivery Agent, so that we essentially have three sets of eyes on the packet as we're doing it going around. And that's very good because you're not necessarily relying on just that one notary. I'm not saying that that one notary is not absolutely totally capable of doing the entire signing, but you have those two extra layers of a surety, if you will, that as the documents cross their place for them to sign, they double check that the principal signed as they were supposed to and where they were supposed to, and that they dated, and that as they're doing theirs, they will actually look at what else is in the packet to see if, say, for example, I missed a stamp, or if I didn't strike out and put an initial on something that needed to be stricken through or whatever. The documents can get really, really thick, and they look alike sometimes. Sometimes the power of attorney, as well as our power of attorney for financial as well as for healthcare, they can look extremely similar. And so if you're not careful, you can get the pages just shuffled and get them out of order, and that can create chaos. Because like I said, if you're going through that whole process of trust and then power of attorney, and so forth, that's a good process, because it keeps everything in line and in the same stacks and same order that it needs to be in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's smart, because you've got to have the witnesses anyway. So instead of random witnesses, use people that are trained and specialize in trust delivery. I think that's great. So, and that would be a nice signing. So, you and the other witnesses who are CNTDAs, you come out to, Michelle in my house, and we go through everything, and everything's great. But I imagine there's times where there's some red flags. Things come up, do's and don'ts. And I know you talk a little bit in the book about some red flag moments. Can you share, a couple of examples of what a red flag moment might be?
Well, we as notaries tend to run into these types of situations in, I would say, maybe not necessarily in a full trust delivery scenario, because typically those folks have actually gone through an attorney, and the attorney has created, the whole stacks of paper and so forth. So the majority of the time when you're doing a full living trust, and by full living trust, all the ancillary documents that I was talking about, sometimes we have what I call the full estate, which is basically everything except the trust, but everything else that I've mentioned so far. And then you have the third section, which is the one-offs. Now, those one-offs, typically powers of attorney, typically a standalone will or whatever, that's where you're really going to see most of your red flags, because, or at least that's where we've seen most of the red flags. Now, the red flags being somebody who is unsure of what they're signing, right? Or the ID doesn't match what's in the document, or someone is actually being stressed or under duress or being pressured. Someone else in the room who is not necessarily part of the document, but is sort of coercing someone to sign the document. Those are the ones, like I said, we don't normally see that in the full trust, but we will see that on the one-offs and folks. So we actually, as the notary, sort of almost have to maintain the entire calm in the room. And if someone is actually not the principal who is actually signing, but is actually, well, you need to blah, 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 we as the notary have to step up and say, I need to actually speak with this individual a loan. So if you could please, give us some time. And then you actually need to talk to that signer and say, are you okay with signing this document? Do you want to proceed? And so forth. So those red flags they happen quite a bit, as a matter of fact. I had a signing, gosh, it's been, I guess, 4 or 5 weeks ago, and it was in a hospice situation. And those are always the worst, because you already know that they're in hospice, so you know that there's a reason for why these documents have to get done, and expeditiously, usually. But in this particular instance, we went to the signing location, and we were told that the woman was of sound mind and everything else. And we get there, and yeah, she was not coherent. She was not, because we were told that she was. And that's one of the things. They have to actually know that they're signing the document. And the person was actually trying to get permission to sell their home so that they could pay all of the stuff that was coming. That's an understandable scenario, right? And you have to have compassion and empathy in that scenario. But at the same time, we have to follow notarial guidelines and state rules that if the person is not oriented and doesn't know what they're signing, I don't know what this is. Oh, wait, that's a red flag. You have to step back. You have to halt that signing, because if they don't know what they're signing, you cannot, as the notary, proceed with that signing. Um, so yeah, there are times where these red flags can actually cause a problem.
And watching out for those, I think, is so important because, I imagine there's times where, like you say, you have to just say, we can't proceed today.
Mhm.
We need to circle back with the attorney who was
Mhm.
involved. Or I can imagine the fairly belligerent adult child who is there kind of ordering mom and dad, you need to get this signed. And then they won't leave the room when you ask for permission
Right.
to speak with them
Mhm.
privately.
Yeah.
That's sensitive stuff.
There was a situation that I had not too terribly long ago as well, where the individual was really kind of just shady. I mean, you could tell that something was off. But at the same time, even though you could tell something was off, you need to know what it is so you can document it in your journal for the refusal. Finally, during the middle of all of this, I got my reason. And that was when they signed the document, they signed a different name than what was on their ID. Boom. Now I can do that, because even though they were parading around as being who they were on that ID, when they went down there, they signed their real name, not the name that was on the ID. Mhm. And so, yeah, at that point, it's like, yeah, I'm halting this. This is, you signed a different name. Well, I made a mistake. No, this has been a shady thing all along, and no, now I have reason to back away from this. So yeah, that was a moment, and you have to pay attention to those things. As the notary, you have to make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so the book again, which I loved, and I'm not even a notary, but if I were going to go into that, this would be my Bible that I would carry around with me. Um, but and so again, any notary who's out there, if you're involved in estate signings and things, grab a copy of this book. But for estate attorneys listening today, I mean, they might wonder, well, why does this matter to me or my practice? Can you, how confident and well trained notaries actually protect an attorney's reputation and the clients and improve the signing process? Can you talk about why this book would be important for the estate planning attorneys to understand as well, Dean?
I'm really hopeful that this book can actually gain exposure, in the estate planning space, because in the real estate space, they are so tired of notaries, right? It's just saturated, and notaries are just bombarding real estate. Let me do your signings, let me do your signings. But for some strange reason, in the estate planning space, we are unknown, nobody knows that we exist in the estate planning aspect. And so I'm hopeful that attorneys will actually be able to see that, yes, we are here, we do exist, we can help you. And by saying that, what I mean is we can be an extension of their practice, their professionalism, and what they offer to their client, by actually, helping with the scheduling and coordinating witnesses, and then with the elevated knowledge that our notaries public have in estate planning, okay, and in the estate signings. Not that we're the planners, no, but we know the documents and we know how they have to be executed. The same way that, the attorney would take and invite them into their office or have to schedule a place to go do it. We as mobile notaries are able to do this anywhere, right? At the convenience of the signer, which actually is better for the attorney because now their client is happy because, hey, they didn't have to take off work. We can go to their home on a weeknight. We can go to their home on a weekend, Saturday or Sunday. We coordinate the witnesses. They don't have to actually have folks, come and look at their documents that know them, that they're thinking, oh, they're looking here trying to see who's going to get what. And no, we have other notaries public who are, sworn to confidentiality, officers of the state, right? That, have their own E&O insurance and so forth. And so by doing all, and then we scan the documents back to the attorneys, right? So we are full service for estate planning attorneys. Not that we're trying to take their clients, not that we're trying to do anything other than be an extension of their professionalism and promote their business at the same time that we're helping the signers, execute their documents properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many solopreneurs, estate planning attorneys, or many are doing virtual planning, and they don't have the time, or even in a small firm, maybe the staff, to meet the client when it's most convenient for the client, because that's expensive to send my paralegal, all the way across town. Not only that, it puts her at risk,
Right.
and those kind of things. And so I think for the attorneys, especially those who use or considering using professional mobile notaries, I think this book matters. I think those that are certified notary trust delivery agents matter. It gives them that comfort level and professionalism, knowing that this individual has been trained in this process and they follow the rules and the procedures kind of outlined in this book, and they know the red flags to look for.
Mm-hmm.
So
That, and also an additional thing that the CNTDAs can actually do, more of a white glove service as well for these attorneys. Like, for example, we keep on stock 3-hole 24-pound premium paper, so that for those attorneys that need us to print the documents. Now, granted, that's a huge thing in real estate transactions. Loan documents, notaries are always printing. But for estate planning attorneys, we actually print, and some of our local attorneys provide us with their binders and their dividers so that we can actually put it in the binder as we take it to the signing ceremony, and it saves them shipping, and it saves them printing and so forth, because we do that for them. We prep the documents and tab them and all that. So this what I'm hopeful is that, say, for example, a notary can actually slip one of these books into their hands to let them know that we exist, we are here to help them, and we can project the same professionalism that they want known, and their reputation, at the same time of actually helping them get their documents done.
Yeah, you bet. You emphasize professionalism, attire, tone, aftercare messages,
Absolutely.
emotional awareness. So why are these small things actually big differentiators in the estate planning world?
Well, okay, so for example, when you buy a house, you if you've ever bought a house, there's a thick pack of paper that you're going to be just signing your life away over and over and over. In estate signing, it's not that they're signing their life over, but it's that emotional aspect of what they're having to deal with and what they've dealt with up to this point. We're, like I said earlier, we're trying to help them get across that finish line, for that sigh of relief of, I'm protected. Everything is good now. Whatever should happen at this point, let it happen because we're good. But the concept that these folks have actually been, if they've worked with an attorney, it's been almost dreadful. Not to say the attorney's dreadful, but the topic is dreadful because not very many people like walking around talking about the end of their life, right?
Right.
And it's not a topic that it's not a joyful, happy topic, but it's a necessary topic, right?
Yeah, what really struck
And
me was, you talked about, the tone, and yeah, you're talking about people as something very serious. And so the way you approach it, you don't want to do it in a humorous way, but you also don't want to do it like you're the Undertaker.
right.
And then attire matters because you're representing the law firm. Now, I'm
Hmm.
not going to show up, do a state signing wearing a Metallica or a Beavis and Butthead T-shirt. I'm going to,
Yeah.
put a jacket on. And for anyone listening, don't wear a black jacket because you look like an Undertaker. You know,
Right. Right.
Go with a nice blue of some sort, right?
And don't
But
drive a hearse.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, I think those things really stood out to me as just that you coach and mentor people, and how should your tone be? How should your attire be? You're representing a law firm, and doing things like that. And I think it's a huge differentiator that's
Well,
out
and
there.
even if it's not a law firm that they're representing, they're representing themselves, right? If it's a DIY, say someone did it from Wheels and Trust, or they did it from Rocket Lawyer or whatever, still that signer deserves a quality notary that knows their stuff. And so, just even if it's an individual notary going to sign a DIY produced plan, your own image still matters because you're still your own notary business in and of itself. If you're working with an attorney, then yes, you're an extension of them. But if you get a what's called a mail away, or someone says, "Hey, I need a notary for my standalone documents or whatever," you are still projecting the professionalism of your own expertise and knowledge, as opposed to showing up in jeans and a t-shirt saying, "Hey, where's that document you want me to sign? Hey, here we go, let's do it." No, you project, and you say, "Oh, it's not humorous." Well, you'd be amazed. Sometimes it's humorous, and it's not on the part of us. It's amazing how we'll be sitting there with, and it's usually a husband and wife, and it's usually the husband as they're going through, what do you want done at end of life? Oh, well, hey, I don't care what you do with me. Just, hey, just pull the plug. I don't care. Where do I sign pull the plug at? They, they, sort of conjure up that spirit of happiness, if you will, with each other. And I mean, that's fun. And we can giggle at that. But typically when we get to like the living will, the advanced directive, I always make sure that everybody is at a holy hush as far as the notaries, because that's one of the most serious documents in that entire packet, right? It's the one that's talking about the, that one is really solemn,
Yeah,
and that's why we
extending
save it for
life,
last.
DNR orders. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, we save
Yeah,
that for last so that the others they've been able to concentrate on, because you get to that one and you never know really what somebody is thinking in their head as far as like, "Oh man, this is the end of life. What do I want done?" And that can be depressing. That can be a buzzkill
yeah,
from doing the
absolutely.
rest of it. And so
Yeah.
yeah, that's why we do it that way.
So this has been great. And before we wrap, I just want to talk to you about one last thing briefly. Uh, Tell me about Apex mentorship and how it's an extension of what you talk about in the book, and especially for notaries who want to take their career to the next level?
Apex Mentorship is a brainchild of mine. And it's not a notary mentorship that's meant to compete with like all of the other well-known national influencers and all that. Really what I do, and I'm actually a trainer and instructor, teacher, basically by what I've usually always done my entire life in the IT world. And so now that I actually stepped into this because of what happened with dad, and, because I don't know if you knew this, but it was my dad's ordeal that sort of, in my own mind, kicked me out of the IT world, really, to tell me, hey, I need to be in the notary business. And specifically, the notary business that actually helps people with their trusts and estates and their final stuff, right? Because of what I went through with dad, I wanted to be part of, I can't be the solution, but I want to be part of the solution. And so I started Apex because I wanted to address the gaps that are, um, as a signing service owner, I get to see a lot of the errors and a lot of the places where notaries are lacking. And estate planning, as far as estate signing notaries, there was a lack. Not to say that there's not great training and great credentials and everything else, but um, uh, let's how can I put it? Not everybody learns the same way or whatever. And so I really wanted to put this together because um, there are so many things that can get missed in an estate plan. For example, the most last wills and testaments or pour over wills require the initials of the testator or testatrix at the bottom of each corner of each will. And if that's not done, guess what? Someone can slip that page out, make a change, and put it back in there because it doesn't have the initials on it, right? And but so that's a very important aspect of that. And so there's just so many different things that can be overlooked in an estate signing, and so that's why I wrote the book, and that's why I thought, okay, I'll do it this way. But Apex, I also, I teach a LinkedIn class to help people promote their own notary business on LinkedIn and so forth, and just a bunch of other stuff that's free and whatever. But I just really wanted to be able to help people in the notary space increase and develop clarity and confidence in doing what they're doing. And I even with the book, I have what's called a boot camp, Trust and Estates, that is a weekly call that lasts for an hour and a half, so that people can come and do mock signings in relation to the estate plan, how to present. They can come and present a trust to me as if I'm actually the signer and they are the notary, so they can actually practice and become better at what they're doing. So it's not just the book, hey, go read the book and there, whatever. You can be a part of live training to implement really what's in the book.
Yeah, after over the last couple of years, I've watched, how you operate, how you work, and I admire the way that you want to help others. Many times without any kind of compensation, you just want to help build a better notary out there.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so for our listeners, in the show notes below, if you want to reach out to Dean, if you're a notary, if you're an estate planning attorney, if you want to get a copy of the book, I've got his contact information. His website is there. The link to be able to access his book via Amazon. It's all there. I encourage people to do it. Dean, my friend, it is always an honor having you on this show. You've taken years of experience, compassion, professionalism, and you've turned them into a practical playbook that I think is raising the bar for everyone involved. So again, if a listener, if you're a notary, you handle trust work, the book belongs in your toolkit. If you're an estate planning attorney or an estate planner, this resource can be a powerful way to ensure that the signings reflect the same shall we say, same care that you put into when you created the documents.
Yes.
So, Dean, thank you. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you. Good
You
to be
bet.
here. Good to see you.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for tuning into Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. Again, I'm Jon Braddock, reminding you that estate planning isn't just about the documents. It's about dignity, preparation, and peace of mind for those that you love. Make it a great day.